The letter that never came. The Wyoming sky stretched far and wide, an endless ocean of blue and dust. Wind whispered across the empty plains, rattling dry grass and bending lonely fences. At the edge of that silence stood Red Creek Ranch, and with it, a man who had forgotten what laughter sounded like. Eli Turner was 35, rough in manner but gentle in spirit. He had built this ranch with his own hands, fenced every acre, branded every calf. Yet the place felt hollow. 10 years ago, he had been engaged to marry a schoolteacher from Laramie, but a stagecoach accident took her life before the wedding. Since that day, he had spoken mostly to his horses and the wind. Each evening he'd sit on the porch, boots up, coffee cold, eyes fixed on the horizon. The sunset bled red across the land, and for a moment, it looked like the earth itself missed someone too. Then one bitter winter evening, a letter arrived. Eli almost ignored it, until he noticed the Denver postmark. The envelope smelled faintly of lavender and paper hope. "Dear Mr. Turner," it read, "a match has been found for you through our mail-order bride service. Her name is Mrs. Clara Hayes, a widow with 2 children. If you accept, she will arrive by wagon train within 3 weeks." Eli stared at the paper for a long time. A widow with children? That wasn't what he had signed up for. He had wanted a partner, not a whole family. But as the wind howled through the window cracks, he realized something. Maybe fate doesn't ask what you want. It gives what you need. 3 weeks later, a wagon appeared on the horizon. Dust trailed behind its wooden wheels as it creaked toward Red Creek Ranch. Eli stood waiting by the gate, his hat pulled low, boots planted in the dirt, heart thundering in his chest. When the wagon stopped, a woman stepped down, Clara Hayes. Her dress was simple, worn thin from travel, and her eyes carried a quiet sorrow that words couldn't touch. 2 small children clung to her skirt. Lily, 7, clutching a doll with one arm missing, and Tommy, 5, hiding behind his sister. Eli tipped his hat. "Ma'am," he said quietly. She nodded, polite and tired. "Mr. Turner, thank you for taking us in." He wanted to tell her she wasn't what he expected. But when he looked at those children, hungry, afraid, and holding on to their mother like she was the last safe place in the world, he swallowed his pride and said, "You must be tired. Come inside." That night, the sound of life returned to the house. The clatter of dishes, the soft voice of a mother telling her children to sleep. For the first time in years, light shone from the ranch windows. Eli sat on the porch, staring into that glow. It felt strange, unsettling but alive. He realized he'd forgotten how warm a home could look when someone lived in it. The next few days tested them all. The children broke things. The horses spooked. Clara tried to cook, but burned the stew twice. Eli grumbled under his breath, but when he saw how she apologized, eyes full of shame, he just shook his head and fixed what needed fixing. One morning, he found Clara outside by the corral. Her hair was loose in the wind, sunlight tracing gold through the strands. She looked fragile, but there was something unyielding about her posture, a kind of strength born from surviving too much. "Why'd you come?" Eli asked quietly. Clara kept her gaze on the horizon. "Because there was nowhere else to go," she said softly. "My husband died in a fire. We lost everything. No one wanted a widow with 2 mouths to feed. But when I saw your ad, I thought maybe—" Her voice trembled. "Maybe God still had a place for us." Eli didn't answer. He just looked at her, really looked. And for the first time in years, something inside him stirred. By the time spring came, the ranch had changed. Tommy followed Eli everywhere, asking questions about ropes and horses. Lily brought wildflowers every morning and placed them on the table. And Clara, she sang softly while hanging laundry, her voice drifting over the open plains like forgiveness itself. Eli would watch her from the barn sometimes, not because she was beautiful, though she was, but because she made the silence less lonely. Then one evening, thunder rumbled over the horizon. Rain began to fall in slow, heavy drops. Eli went out to bring in the horses and saw Clara sitting under the porch, tears mixing with rain. "What's wrong?" he asked. She handed him a crumpled letter, her hands trembling. "They're coming for me," she whispered. "My late husband's brother. Henry. He says I have no right to keep the children. He wants them. Eli felt the storm rise inside him. The thunder crashed louder than before. He looked in her eyes and said the only thing his heart knew. Over my dead body. And as lightning split the dark sky above them, Eli Turner realized that loneliness had finally left his ranch. But in its place, a new battle was coming. Because sometimes, fate doesn't give peace without first testing her heart. The storm at Red Creek Ranch. The storm had rolled over Red Creek like a beast unleashed. Lightning tore across the sky, splitting the dark in half. Eli Turner stood at the barn door, his coat soaked, his jaw set tight as he reread the letter Clara had shown him. Henry Hayes, her late husband's brother, a man known for drinking, gambling, and collecting debts that weren't his to collect. Now he claimed Clara's children were his blood, and by law, his property. But Eli knew men like Henry. They didn't come for family. They came for control. 2 days later, the sound of hooves echoed across the valley. Clara froze when she heard it. Eli was already at the window, rifle resting against his shoulder. 3 riders. One of them, thick-shouldered, mean-eyed, wearing a black duster coat. Henry. They rode straight up to the porch. Rain dripped from their hats as Henry looked around the ranch like he already owned it. Well now, he said with a crooked smile, ain't this a fine setup? Didn't take you long to move on, did it, Clara? Clara's hand trembled around the doorframe. Eli stepped forward. You're not welcome here. Henry chuckled, spitting into the dirt. Not my business, cowboy. The law says those kids got my brother's name. Means they're mine. He looked past Eli toward the barn where the children hid. I'll be talking them now. Eli cocked his rifle. Over my dead body, he said again, his voice like thunder rolling low and steady. The air went still. Even the wind seemed to wait. Henry's smile vanished. He dismounted slowly, his hand moving toward his holster. Eli didn't flinch. He'd been a soldier once, long before he was a rancher. He knew what it meant when a man's fingers twitched near a gun. Last warning, Eli said quietly. You step 1 foot closer and you don't leave this ranch alive. Henry sneered. You think she's worth dying for? Eli's answer came without hesitation. She's the reason I started living again. The gunfight happened faster than breath. 3 shots split the air, flashes of fire against the storm's roar. When the smoke cleared, Henry's men were gone, galloping into the distance. Henry himself lay wounded in the mud, clutching his shoulder. Eli stood over him, chest heaving, rain running down his face. You tell the law whatever story you want, he said coldly. But you tell it from away from here. Henry glared up at him, eyes burning with hatred. But something in Eli's stance made him hesitate. He spat again, got to his feet, and stumbled toward his horse. Fine, he muttered. Keep your damned family. But don't expect peace. He rode off into the storm, leaving behind nothing but hoof prints and fear. Inside, Clara knelt beside Eli, tears mixing with rain on his coat. You could have been killed, she whispered. Eli shook his head. Would have been worth it. She looked at him, truly looked, and for the first time since her husband's death, her heart didn't feel like a grave. Why? She asked softly. Why do you care so much for people who ain't yours? He met her eyes and said, Because I've been waiting for something that felt like home. Didn't know it'd come with a widow and 2 kids. But I reckon fate don't make mistakes. The days after the storm were quiet. Tommy helped Eli fix the broken fence. Lily drew pictures of horses and hung them on the kitchen wall. And Clara, she smiled again, not out of habit, but out of hope. The ranch felt alive, not just with sound and movement, but with belonging. One evening, as the sun dipped low over Red Creek, Eli stood beside Clara on the porch. The sky blazed gold and orange, like the world was finally at peace. Clara took his hand. Her fingers were small, rough, and warm. I don't know if I'm ready to love again, she said honestly. Eli smiled faintly. That's all right. I'll wait. That night, the stars came out brighter than they had in years. The wind was calm. The land was quiet. And in that stillness, Eli Turner realized something. He had waited for a bride, but what he received was far greater. A family, a reason to live. a chance to rebuild a life that once felt too broken to fix. Because sometimes the greatest blessings come dressed as heartbreak. And sometimes fate's cruelest joke is really its gentlest mercy.